Hello, hello, hello. I've been focused for the past several months on poetry and my Instagram channel, which is Level 2 Poetry. I have not lost my interest in psychometrics or lost my interest in YouTube, and so this will be my first YouTube video in a long time. This will be about Myers-Briggs typology stuff. Two major things I think that I've figured out using intuition and observation. Um, First of all, I think I'm a different personality type than I thought I was. If you had been watching my Myers-Briggs content the past several years, I have several times identified myself as an INTJ. That is because I have many INTJ traits. Um, I have had several people in the last year give me very strong feedback on the topic of whether or not I'm an introvert or an extrovert. Um, a very intelligent ENFP friend, who is also a gifted naturopath, had said to me that I don't have the sort of small self-presentation of an introvert, that I have a big extrovert energy. And she has helped me with so many things that I really have wanted to listen to her wisdom on many things. She's helped me with my allergies, my histamine bucket throughout this pollen and smoke season, which I am enduring, and she's been a great source of wisdom to me. Also, those of you that know a little about my personal life know that I'm divorced, and my kid took the opportunity to not deal with me for 4 years, and got back in contact earlier this spring when I spent some time in the hospital related to allergies, um, and is sort of reconnecting a relationship. We're building a new relationship because what I did not know 4 years ago is that my kid is trans, born female, internally, psychologically, from his own perspective, male, and I am doing what I can to build a new relationship with a person I didn't really know before. Um, and as I sat through an hour of counseling with my son and his counselor, I began to hear various criticisms about my attitudes and perspectives and behavior, of myself, of the childhood experience of my son. And I began thinking the adjectives that are being described here, the person being described here is an extrovert, the person being described here is an ENTJ, that the flaws that my son was having to endure on the part of his father were ENTJ faults. And I can specify that to a greater extent in further videos. So the main insight of this video has to do with language and why it is so hard for people of different personality types and quadrants to understand each other sometime. And I think I've found the root of it, a single clarifying principle that creates the muddiness and ambiguity when people of different personalities and functions try to understand each other. And I think it's the idea of a question. And it goes like this. I think that whenever anyone asks a question in their own head, it's clear. But when you hear that question, your first function automatically rewrites it into a new question in its own language. And I began thinking about this as I mentioned earlier, I had made a switch recently, almost a year ago, to primarily working on Instagram poetry content and not on YouTube. As I've explained to several people, I spent 5 years on that channel, built about 500 videos, and had 75 subscribers by the end of that process. And spending 8 months on 6 months on Instagram, 8 months, something. I've made a little less than 100 poetry videos and have between 1,000 and 2,000 followers. And so it appears in terms of intensity and strength of response, Instagram's a great place for my poetry. So one of my friends, I happen to have the privilege of several blind friends, and they like to test websites for accessibility to the blind. And I was informed that YouTube is much more blind accessible. And I was given that as a piece of data. And it wasn't a question asked to me, but it was kind of like, why are you, in my mind, what I heard was, why are you on this less accessible platform? If you care about blind people, and I don't mean to over politicize anything, to which my first function, which I believe to be extroverted thinking, said, what do you want me to do about that? What's my course of action? And I believe that in a lot of situations when I hear a complaint or a question, what I hear is, what should I do? That my reaction to any sort of crisis or challenge is, I need to do something. What's the course of action? Which I believe is extroverted thinking talking, which contributes to my notion that I'm an extrovert, not an introvert. My notion that I'm an ENTJ, not an INTJ. I'm obsessed with goals, obsessed with entrepreneurship, obsessed with leading and planning. So my experience of the idea that questions are the root of function-based communication problems began with someone pointing out the accessibility issues differing between YouTube and Instagram. And what I heard in my head was, I'm complaining that you chose the wrong platform for blind people to find your material. And what I heard was, and my own response was, what should I do about that? And my friend who had said that's an INFJ, I don't think was trying to critique me or point out that I needed to do something, but all I could hear in my own head was, um, what should I do about this? As opposed to trying to gather information about it. What I wanted to do was make a decision. I wanted more conclusive data that would make me make a decision one way or the other, to pick one platform over another. Here I am doing both, which means I didn't decide to do one over the other. But I think that the root reason, as I mentioned before, why you could have two people think that they're having the same conversation and radically misunderstand each other is that every question is retranslated into the listener's primary function. And then they're hearing a different question. So, as I mentioned this to Insomniac, whose proper human name is not kosher to say on the internet, a close ENTP friend and confidant of mine, he, as I shared this theory with him, this hypothesis with him, I said, the way we would test this theory is I would ask you a question, and you would tell me what new question emerges in your head, because I don't think you ever really hear the other person's question entirely. You hear it as well as the way your own mind interpreted the question, which I think, if you extrapolate that across all 16 personalities and two people having a long conversation full of questions and answers contains more than enough moments of difficulty, moments where the pathway of straightforward empirical fact or truth takes labyrinthine left and right turns, more than explains two people's ability to profoundly misunderstand each other. You've talked to friends or coworkers or bosses, tried to be super clear, and they've heard a radically different thing than you meant to say. And this has happened to you over and over. This has happened to me over and over. So I'd like you to think to yourself how this question is applied to you. At least once today, someone has asked you a question and you have reacted differently than they expected, or vice versa. You've asked someone a question you thought was straightforward and you got a reaction from them that wasn't just like, here's the answer to your question. It was them reacting to the perception of your question. I think that's as much as I'm going to say about this. Pray more, complain less.